So we're going to start with the light, and we all know what that's about. So Father, Mother, God, we welcome ourselves again into your love, light, and sound, asking to be filled, surrounded, protected with the light of the Christ and the Holy Spirit. We ask for the love, guidance, protection, and direction of the mystical traveler and preceptor consciousness through John Roger to guide and direct us into that which is for our highest good. And anything that comes forward, we ask that it be brought to us in ways that we can understand, along with the strength and the courage to act on it. And if any karma, negativity, or imbalance can be released, we ask that it be taken into the light, dissolved there, and that we are restored to your grace, peace, and love, and to your joy. And for this opportunity to be in loving fellowship, we truly give our thanks. And so it is, Berush Beshan. And we'll do a couple on Ayus because we like that. Anayu, Anayu, Anayu. So, Jeffrey, would you like to say a few words to get us going?
Sure, about the concept of the joy portfolio.
That would probably be a good thing.
All right. Well, this talk came out of a conversation I was having with Russell about Heartfelt Foundation, and I mentioned this concept and he liked it and said we should do a talk. So here goes. This year, something really clicked for me. In particular, I discovered a type of work with people that I'd never really done before. And people started coming to me and saying they wanted a certain type of coaching, and I just never thought of it. And what was really peculiar, so I agreed to do it, was just the overwhelming sense of joy I felt in my life in general as I started to do it. And I started feeling fulfilled in ways that I don't remember feeling. And I started recognizing that this didn't really negate anything else I was doing. It's just somehow I had reached some kind of harmony between elements of my life, and I felt this incredible sense of joy. But I was still confused because it wasn't on the mental level. It was like it didn't make sense on paper why I felt so overwhelmingly joyful. So I started to realize that underneath this sense of fulfillment, there seemed to be these kinds of underlying focuses that continued to bring me joy. These themes that seemed to run through all the different things I was doing. And that ultimately the degree to which I loved doing something or something brought joy inexplicably to me was connected to these themes that seemed to underlie what I was doing. I'm also aware that life is never really static, right? We've all studied habit formation and feedback loops, and everything we do seems to have a long tail of impact on our life. The choices that we make, the agreements that we break, the things that we choose to do or not to do, it's always this chain reaction of things. So I started to realize that when I completed agreements or when I closed off something like, I call it unsubscribing, or I let go of something, the energy effect was months later. It was like I was regaining energy each month that was not being invested in those things. So I was discovering that all of this sort of functioned a bit like an investment portfolio. So I would put energy into these specific themes, and there would be a return on investment depending on how much money I placed and how responsibly I invested my energy. Now, at the same time, I discovered that I was never going. This is like the busiest time in my life, I would say. I took on responsibility for Heartfelt Foundation, which is sort of like more of a service branch of what we do spiritually. I am doing the coaching thing. I still have a legal practice. I have my work at Sony Pictures. So I realized that all of a sudden, more than ever before, my energy and my time became this precious commodity. And I realized that if I was going to invest those into these newfound joys, I needed to somehow take stock of where I was placing that energy and that focus. So I started to understand that like there's kind of this bank account of energy. And when I did my SCs, I connected to spirit, or when I took care of my body, or when I did productivity practices, it's like building my bank account of energy, and then I could turn around and invest it. But I would often talk to people about how they related to their life, and they tended to lump things in accordance with practices and things they were doing, like I work here, I have this relationship, and they would judge it on that basis. But what this joy portfolio concept allowed me to do was kind of flip all of that and say everything I do in some sense should contribute to one piece of my joy portfolio. It doesn't have to contribute to all of it. So what I would often hear from people is, oh, I'm not happy in my work. It's not fulfilling me here, here, and here. But ultimately, work isn't meant to necessarily fulfill all of those pieces of your joy portfolio. So it kind of liberated me from judging these aspects of my life as well. So I realized that the degree to which I kept balance in my joy portfolio and invested energy and time into those underlying themes that I discovered, I would just become irrationally joyful and fulfilled in my life. And I'm still in that journey because I have a lot of responsibility and a lot of pull on my time. So I'm kind of in this like turning the Titanic process. But it's like for the first time in my life, I feel like I have something like a eureka moment of what joy is for me. And it certainly isn't mental. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But at the same time, it brought a sense of harmony to my life, because every aspect of the ecosystem of my time and the things that I do became gifts to the degree to which they contribute to these elements. Now, the parts of my joy portfolio are spiritual awakening, peacemaking, and washing the feet of the world. And that's my word for like physically serving other people in very tangible ways. So the degree to which something contributes to those almost inevitably determines the level of joy I'm going to feel from doing those things. And the degree to which my joy portfolio is out of whack, it almost always predicts the level to which I feel out of balance. So for me, this was like a huge aha moment, the bank account and the joy portfolio. And I realized it's so different for everybody. And it's so beautiful to discover that with people, like to work with people and find out what it is that's, and sometimes it's like, for me, the peacemaking thing, I had no idea that that's what I was doing at all these projects at Sony Pictures when I was having these side conversations and making peace with executives that were like warring and fighting. But like, that's what I love doing. I like bringing peace. So it's been a process of discovery and refinement, but ultimately, this has been my big eureka of the year. So that's kicking that off, Russell. That's what I got. Oh, you're muted, brother.
I just had a couple people saying, I can't find the link.
Oh, gotcha.
So, so you didn't hear me scrabbling all around there. I want to say a couple things, and then we'll go to you, Luis. And along the way, I think you all will know how to use the little button at the bottom of your screen that says reactions, where you click on that, and there's one that says raise hand. And if you want to share or ask a question, we're going to just keep free forming this, so that'll be just fine. Just one thing I want to piggyback with Jeffrey. Those of us that have been around John Roger for a long time will have heard him say there's only one energy, and spirit is indifferent about what we do with it, but it will supply whatever we want to do with it. Well, how do you do something with energy? Well, it's called focus. Now, he would say energy follows thought. So you have to be careful where the thoughts go, because the energy follows. So the joy account is one of several energy accounts we have. So as many of you will know, I've been doing lots of free coaching and counseling for the last year or so. And some of the questions that people come up with have to do fundamentally with an experience they're having, but wish they weren't, but they've never twigged that it's because of where they're placing their focus. And one of the things that's really obvious when we say it is that if you watch all the news, it's one thing to be informed, it's another thing to get energetically engaged with it. And the news is predominantly negative. So, gosh, I'm so disturbed. Well, we're watching disturbance. So in other words, we're saying, Spirit, here's where my focus is. I like disturbance, so it's bringing that to us. So we want to kind of watch where the focus goes. Last little thing before I come back to you, Luis. As Spirit would have it, yesterday I was listening to a JR seminar from March of 2000. It's called Trying to Know the Divine. And this is a theme that we'll build on, that where JR talked about joy. And he said, joy comes from the spirit, but happiness comes from the mind. So what Jeffrey was saying, well, geez, my job should be making me happy. Well, no, maybe I should be happy in my job, but that's still different from joy. But if I bring spirit into my job, I might have joy, even if I'm not quite happy, which could be really a mind blower. So lastly, he said, the characteristics of joy are peace, contentment, and fulfillment. And we probably all had the experience of being at peace. But when we're in peace, we're rarely saying, oh gosh, look at that, I'm in peace. We usually only notice that we were in peace just after we left. And that's where JR would often say, well, what did you have to focus on in order to leave the peace? Because the peace is always present, but you may go backwards in time or forward in time, but peace is present. So with all that, we'll build some more, but let's go to you, Luis.
Actually, I was not raising my hand. I was clapping at Jeffrey.
Oh, you were clapping.
Yeah, it
I
was
thought
very insightful. Yeah,
I missed it. Sorry. Great. So at this point, let me just pause. Does anyone have anything you'd like to share or a question you'd like to ask for Jeffrey, for me, or a comment at all? Carol Niatre.
Now I have a question.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll go with you. Go, Luis, and then we'll go to Carol.
Okay. So Jeffrey, could you repeat the three components that you mentioned as part of your joy?
So for me, it's spiritual awakening, peacemaking, and washing the feet of the world. And those mean specific things for me. So usually the degree to which I spend my time in something, it will contribute varying amounts to each. So it's interesting because the really, really wonderful things that I spend my time on tend to light up all three of those.
Mm-hmm.
So like Heartfelt Foundation, to me, lights up all three of those. So it's a wonderful thing to spend my time on. There's other things that I do that really only fulfill like the peacemaking aspect of it, or really only fulfill the spiritual awakening aspect of it. And what I love about the framework is it takes kind of the fault or the ego out of it, and it just becomes strategy. Where do I place my focus? And there will be my heart. So I place my focus on what is going to give me the biggest, to be crude, bang for my buck for each of these three things that I identified that seemed to be so core. And it was interesting. I knew I had hit the joy portfolio in terms of defining it because I had the wrong words. And then when it hit, even though it didn't make sense to me, I actually cried because it was just right, you know. And it was like, yeah, that's me. That's what my joy looks like. And And so it's been really fulfilling. And now, like I said, I mean, the real the real tricky business is, up until I figured that out, I seem to have entangled myself in many, many things that don't necessarily contribute generously to the parts of my joy portfolio, but I am essentially subscribing to those things, meaning energy from my stocks, from my time, that's going into that every month, compounding over and over again until I either complete it or release that. And I've had a lot of that grace extended, where when I'm really focused on the joy portfolio in those 3 areas, I've had spirit fill my gas tank. And here I am writing emails and preparing stuff for Heartfelt at like 11 p.m. when I'm like half asleep, because there's just so much on it. There's so much, and I don't, it's like, you know, it's the Hanukkah miracle. I don't know where that stuff came from. That was for you, Bransky.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think something before we go to Carol, as we're focusing on this, one of the things I gathered from all those years of working with JR is the distinction between joy and happiness, which he made real clear in this seminar. And a lot of people are settling for happiness because it's more evident. Why? Because, as he would say, what we're really interested in this world, sort of like by nature of being born into a body, is sensation. So there's body-based sensation, whether that's from food or exercise or sleep or whatever. And then there's emotional sensation, where we want to get the feelings all stimulated. And then there's the mental sensation, which doesn't really sound like a sensation, but mental stimulation. So we get that ATION. We want to have sensation, stimulation, etc. But those are always short-lived, because we become numb to it very quickly. And then we look for the next sensation, the next upgrade, if you will, except it's not an upgrade. But the joy characteristics, he said, peace, contentment, and fulfillment. None of that required movement. It required peace. And it doesn't have a big amplitude, like I'm excited, I'm just at peace. And that's sort of a distinction that we're all here to learn. Is like, when did I focus away and out into the world, which is where the mental, physical, emotional stuff takes place, or come back into my heart where the spirit resides? And I'm a little crybaby myself. Some of you have been around for a while have seen me on stage enough times to know, yeah, he's got the waterworks. Whenever that spirit shows up, the tears come in. And it's just, you know, to me, it's the ultimate in my joy experiences when that just floods over and through me. Well, there's that little piece. Carol, would you like to share or ask a question?
Yeah, I'd like to share. I'm very curious, Jeffrey, because it came up 3 times while you were speaking, if you'd be so kind to share your ministerial blessing. Because I see, and I don't know your ministerial blessing, but I really get the sense of how it's hooked into everything you're talking about. So would you please do that?
I'm not sure. Is everybody on the call like familiar with that? Russell, what do you think?
Oh,
Um,
well, give the essence of it.
Yeah, no. So I'll say that the word fun is in it, and the word Christ is in it. So I think peacemaking and washing the feet of the world and, you know, spirit awakening are pretty much in there. That's true. But I really resonate with what Russell was saying in terms of, I find that the concept of happiness seems to always have some kind of conditionality baked into it. It's like, if I get this, or if I get the raise, or if this person likes me, there's always a linearity to it. Whereas what I love about what came forward for me with the joy portfolio is it's just an essence. It's like, there's not a conditionality to it. It's just the essence of my joy. It's like just describing what it is for me.
Got it.
Yeah, and it doesn't, there's not like a, if I do this, then I get that. If I do this, then I get that. It's more of a just consciously directing my life toward joy. And I agree with Russell too. It's very much for me a peaceful sense of completeness, but in kind of an infiniteness. It's not an excitement, but there is a sense that there's an infinite supply inside of me when I'm in it. Like Nihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about flow. It's kind of like the way he describes it. Like there's this alignment or presence when I find when the three aspects of it are lit up for me. For my three, yours might be five, yours might be two, who knows? But when my portfolio is lit up, I feel like I'm in flow. So it's not excitement. It feels like something's doing me. And I'm not doing anything. It's like something's doing me. But whatever it is, I like it. You know.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Exactly. And now I finally got how to ask my question. Either to Russell, to Jeffrey. When you're in the energy field of knowing, how do you bring that information back?
Go ahead, Russell.
Well, that's a really good one.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, when
Because it happens a lot. And
yeah.
some of the things.
So I'll share a few things that I learned working side by side with Jared, doing all those seminars together.
Yeah.
Plus the one-on-one time we had, plus things that have come out from rereading discourses and re-listening to SAPs and all that kind of stuff. When a person is attuned to that inner master, they have immediate access to all knowledge. Now, that's not necessarily the same as all information, but it can be. If the information is necessary, it will come present. If we are there in the consciousness of washing the feet, as Jeffrey would say, if we're in that consciousness of service. So for me, there's a couple of things. I'll give you a couple of examples. I was doing an Insight One in Los Angeles a whole bunch of years ago now, and there were about 250 people in the room. And this one fellow who was a sort of a middle-level actor, you know, wasn't a household name, but he was in enough shows. And he was standing up, sharing about some difficulty he was having. And we didn't get much progress. And I finally just said to him, you know, Fred, you remind me of a Corvette. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, Corvettes, you know, they're sleek, they're sexy, they're gorgeous, they're powerful, and they're made of plastic. If you bump into one, it shatters. And this guy shattered. He just burst into tears. And he said, I can't go on. And he just sat down and he just sobbed and cried. And he came up to me on a break later and he said, how did you know? And I said, know what? He said, I collect Corvettes.
Wow.
Now, I didn't know how to go access that, but I learned from JR, hey, if this thing shows up and it stays present, articulate it, because that's the knowing. And the way I relate to this when I do work with people, I take the personality of Russell and I literally stick it over my left shoulder. So the personality and ego. And then I invite the high self to run the show. And the high self communicates with the other one. And basically it says, well, tell me this. And then things come out of the mouth. Well, what's coming out of the mouth is a form of that direct knowledge if I'm truly in the spiritual ego. And last little thing on that, back in '95 at the Grace Retreat, a whole bunch of things had shifted in my, what I did for a living, just basically all dissolved. And I had this sharing with Jer in front of the 250 people there. And I said, you know, I don't have any motivation to do anything now. He said, oh, that's interesting. Why? I said, well, you know, all these years I've made my life about making a contribution and making a difference. He said, yeah. I said, but now it seems to me that that's fundamentally a judgment against God. And he kind of looked at me and said, what do you mean? I said, well, it's like this. Dear God, you're doing pretty good. But if you had me in there making a difference, boy, could we make a difference. And JR, just what you're doing, he
It's
just
funny.
cracked up. And he said, so what you're dealing with, and this is the first time I ever heard him articulate it, was probably not the first time he ever said it, but the first time it went in. He said, there's a difference between the ego and the spiritual ego. Now, you can go out and do this service work. You can go out and do insight. You can go out and do USM. You can go do whatever you're doing in service, but you have to be mindful that the ego is right there.
Mhm,
And it's going to be really easy for it to step in and say, look what I'm doing.
mhm.
And now you're in trouble. Because, however, the ego has certain strengths, characteristics, mental abilities, experiences, and spirit will use those to deliver spirit into the world. So the task, and that's why SEs are so powerful, is to attune to the spiritual ego as it's dropping in the information and then using the skills, the abilities, the ego strength, if you will, to deliver into the world. You just have to be mindful that the image I've been using lately for people is in your homes, you have electric light bulbs, and there's a cord that goes from the lamp into the wall, and the electricity flows through. Well, the cord isn't making the electricity happen. But if the cord had an ego, it could say, see what I'm doing? And so when I'm in cord consciousness, when I'm in that washing the feet, when I'm just
From
serving,
there to
it
there.
just all flows.
Mhm,
And time disappears. Because, well, it's what it means to be present.
mhm,
And another word is at one.
mhm.
Joy is when I'm at one, I'm in one with the spirit. The spirit is joyful.
Mhm.
Don't know if that helps, but
Oh, that's tremendous. No, I really get what you're talking about, because I know for myself, when I'm in the knowingness of it, it's like I feel myself getting so excited. It's like I'm lost for words. And then when I try to bring all of that back down and manage the enthusiasm that's going on inside of me, it's like sometimes it comes over and it spills out.
yeah.
And then the word, and then I have to come back down to, and then I'm aware that I have to come back down to the word level to express what I'm trying to express. I hope that made sense.
Well, here's a little tweak for you.
Okay, I could use a tweak.
I
well,
would tweak as well.
you're a high energy person. That's probably
Yeah.
not news to you.
Big news flash.
And so I'm just going to say this the way it's appearing to me.
I got
and then you adjust. So you're in another space.
Yes,
You attune to that higher frequency.
absolutely.
You're in the enthusiasm. That means in God's energy.
Yes,
But God's energy is not excitement. God's energy is loving.
it's loving.
It's peace. But you notice it, and then the other part of you goes, oh, wow, look at that. That happened for me. And now you get excited about it. And it's like some part presses that I have to go spill the excitement onto others.
Yeah, got it.
Just take it back in and rest. And this is the important phrase that I'm hearing is rest into it.
Ah, I got so many shivers going through me right now. It's amazing. I love it. Take it back in and rest in it.
Rest into it.
Rest into it. Oh, what a big difference.
Yes, because you want to take your energy into the world.
Yeah. But rest into it.
Into it, and then let it define how it wants to be expressed into the world. And it could be, Jar often said, if a minister gets on an elevator,
Yeah.
crowded, all the people on the elevator are blessed.
Wow.
No words are spoken, because the energetic, that's what people are hungry for, thirsty for, is that energy of peace and love that is spirit.
I totally got it. And I do know for myself from a lot of experience is I love it, because you never know where it's gonna go. So there you go. Thank you so much, Russell. That does into it make such a big difference. It's like taking it in and claiming it for myself.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you ever so much. And it's like, because when I was getting ready for this, it's like, how am I going to ask what I'm going to ask? Because I don't even have the words to ask. I know you got it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, you got something to add?
Yeah, I found, so just to respond to your original question, I say I don't know a lot, and I don't make it a process of me doing anything, bringing in energy or otherwise. It's a process of radical willingness. And I find that in the way you described it, there's an assumption that you should be bringing the information in. There's a whole load of stuff that I've been shown that I'm just supposed to look at and be transformed by. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to, the ego mind goes, what do I do with this? I see it. What do I do with it? It's like a problem I have to solve. I have noticed that I get better results, at least in my experience of what you're talking about, with just a state of willingness, a state of I don't know, and cooperation. And most importantly, what Russell mentioned, that presence of loving, of just like, this is the most important person that I've ever seen in my whole life, the most important moment, and this is the one that I love the very most in my entire existence right now. And holding in that presence, then it's just, you follow close, you follow slow, and love takes you where love wants to go. And then the words are just speaking you, is the only way I could describe it. And most of the time I don't know what I don't have any logic to it, or I'll like listen to it afterwards and go, oh, that was pretty nifty. I like that. But there was no processing of it or organizing of it. There was just willingness. Okay, God, what would you have me do? Just over and over again. And sometimes silence is what God would have me do. And that can be really, really, really supportive for people.
So much profound wisdom in what you're sharing there, Jeffrey. I know when I wrote my book and all the articles I've ever written, about 300 of them, the way I would write them is I'd sit down in front of my little keyboard, and I wouldn't have any notes. I just say, Father, Mother, God, show me what's to be written today. And then things would show up and I'd type them until they stopped showing up, and then I would be done. And that's available to all of us because we're all tapped into that source. But the question isn't, gosh, what do I want people to know? It's, what would Spirit have me share? And when I'm in that, I mean, that's joyful all by itself. It's just another form of the washing of the feet, the peace and the presence. Anyone else have a question or
Wait, you can raise your hand. Wait.
and if you do, at the bottom, there's the little reactions button. Looks like Lynn and Larry are using the
Larry.
Analog version.
mechanical hand,
Right.
It's a real hand as opposed to
virtual hand. Yeah.
you guys are talking about energy and how it comes from someplace else as opposed to you create it. And maybe 4 years ago, I painted a painting, not because any reason for it, not for anybody. I just painted a painting, and it was filled with energy, really filled with energy. And I just really got that Spirit wanted me to do something, but it wasn't with the painting. So after meditating, I suddenly got, it wanted me to write a book about this painting. And I'm not a writer. I am not. You write 300 articles. I haven't written since school. I haven't written an article. And I said, well, you know, why don't you get someone that can do this? But anyway, in going through my life as a part of my journey to find Spirit, and in looking back at my life, things that made me feel bad, things that were wrong, things made me guilty, as I did them, they started to dissipate. And I started to get a calmness, just to feel like just sitting around and just being. It's a very different, I was kind of wired a lot of my life, and this is not that. Anyway, it's just, I don't know, I'm still almost finished with the book, but it's just, I don't know. I said, God, I'm going to give you this. This book is for you. Whatever way it goes, if it never goes anywhere, that's fine. But I'm going to do it because I got the feeling to do it. And that's where it is. But I feel wonderful. That's the funny thing. Anyway, that's my story.
Well, it's very, very true that it's all energy. And again, as Jared said, Spirit is indifferent what we do with it. And I think one of the things I'm hearing you say is that you're attuned to that energy field beyond the mind.
Yes.
It's expressing to you, through you, in you, with you. And your job, it's like your job is to be the brush.
That's true.
That's good.
That's good.
That really touches a chord.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be a great business card, Larry the Brush.
Well, you know what, Russell? There's a line in his ministerial blessing that says you've been given a blessing of transmutation within your art and your loving.
Yeah.
So that you just encapsulated what that is, the brush.
Well, that's a very beautiful choice of words. They didn't say transformation.
No.
Transformation, if you look it up in the dictionary, says it's a change in form or appearance.
Right.
Right.
And so I always say to people, and believe me, we called it Insight Transformational Seminars at one point.
Right.
And then we dropped that word. If it's a change in form or appearance, I used to say, well, what if you have an old Volkswagen, but you always wanted a Ferrari? You could go online and get a Ferrari car kit, and the body comes on the Volkswagen frame. And do you have a Ferrari? No. But did you change its form or appearance? Yeah. But transmutation means, and Jared taught me this, but it's also in the dictionary, it's a change in form or appearance to a higher frequency. And so it's moving at the frequency level, it's moving at the energy level. And now, as you know, we have the transcendent leadership stuff in MSIA and PTS. And transcendence is the step past transmutation, because that's when the energy rises above all of it and then contains all of it. So we may have to transform before we transmute, before we transcend. And of course, the goal of the MSIA is soul transcendence.
I love to clap like a seal.
I'm a brush and you're a seal. Huh? Very good. We learned something today.
That works. Thank you, Russell.
Thanks, Russell.
Oh, you guys are beautiful. And thanks for your art, Larry. It's fabulous. Does anyone else have a question, a comment, an observation? Oh, Timothea. Speaking of artists,
Yeah.
who do great
It's a
work,
very-
I see some of it in the background.
What's so funny is I had the computer like this. What I wanted to talk about has to do with the painting and back, but I forgot that it was there. Then I adjusted because of the light, and I thought, oh, how this is what I love, the serendipity. I love how spirit shows its presence. I love that we're together. Most of all, I just, there's the majesty of the energy coming together. So that's what, but what came to mind was very funny. There's some things I'm dealing with, physical body things, financial things, but there's this joy anyway. And the realities I have to deal with. But I did this painting, and then the name comes, but it's almost like spirit tells me the name. And when it hits, it's just so fulfilling. It's like something coming together that expresses something other that is very fulfilling to my consciousness. So this painting name was, after everything is said and done, there's joy. And then I saw, then I got an email saying this, I did that before. This talk was on joy, and both of you, who I am joyful to see and hear, as well as everybody. So that's what brings me joy. I guess I said it, the coming together and going higher. And what surprises me is to the extent it's been beyond worrisome circumstance. But that takes me, I have to go deeper into spirit to keep the joy, and I'm grateful for that. And the wanting to share, and it can be somebody in an elevator I start talking to, or talking to a plant I see, then all of a sudden it's miraculous, like God, how did God create this thing? I don't know. I'm sharing that. It's wonderful to be here. And many years from that first insight, Russell, and many trips. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all the time we've had with JR and the teachings. And there you go. So I'd love to hear anything from both of you.
Well, I heard something when you said, and if I heard you correctly, before the painting comes the name.
No, other way around.
You paint first and then it has a name.
Then it tells me its name.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, see,
Clicks in, then my mind, but it's just something comes in, and then it's almost like a vibration.
yes.
And I go, yes.
So that so aligns with this path of the masters, the Shabda
Yoga.
Shabda yoga, the path of light and sound. So we can put so many things together. In beginning was the word, and the word was made flesh. You make the flesh, and then the word reveals itself to you. And the name calls us into its energy field. But as you put the name out, it calls to those who belong to that energy field. And so we begin to resonate in harmony with that energetic vibration. And it's all in the name, like the Sat Nam, which means the name. Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Jeffrey, anything to add?
there's been a theme in my experience with difficult times, a kind of a joy underlying the experience like you're talking about.
Mm,
And always upon reflection, I seem to understand that the suffering was always a prayer answered. I just didn't know it at the time.
mm.
I can remember a very tough time I was having with a boss at work and going into spiritual exercises. And I saw myself praying before I came in this lifetime for the privilege to work with her and give her one last opportunity to work with the light, like I was on my knees. And this is the same person that I complained about. And I kept shaking my fist at the cosmos. Why am I here? Why am I in this situation? Why would this happen to me of all people, who means no harm to anyone? And I felt very, very foolish because I was on my knees begging. And it's happened a lot in my life. And I think there's an inherent joy in the knowledge that that which I am walking through is always a prayer answered. And there's a wonderful seminar called, I think, Walking Joyfully Through Our Karmas.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful seminar. And I think there's also this joy that comes forward for me in the surrendering of aspects of who I am that are the parts of who I am that are resonating with that which is suffering. So if the suffering is I have to pay this bill and I don't know where the money is and all that, like that kind of, it's so healing to just give it away and say, well, this was never really my money in the first place. And it's like, or you could extrapolate it to a part of the consciousness, like I give it away freely. Oh, this was never really mine in the first place. This ego, this mind always belonged to Cal. I'm just borrowing it. I'm borrowing a car, and I'm trying not to dent it too much because I'm a nice person who doesn't dent cars that I borrow. But I give it away freely. When he comes back and says, no, I want that back, I go, okay, here you go. And what's left over is inevitably more of who I truly know myself to be. And that one that I know myself to be is always joy.
No, I heard something there too, Jeffrey. Suffering is sort of a big Buddhist focus, and suffering. There's an old phrase that says pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And and Jack talked a lot about suffering because many of us do suffer. I'm not sure of anybody who doesn't, but it's almost like there's a suffering dimmer switch. I can turn up the level of suffering or turn it down based on how I focus. And I know when I was just beginning university, my dad collapsed and later died that year from leukemia, and the process bankrupted the family. I had $6 to my name and an old beat up used car that I lived in for a while. And that remains with me as a beautiful marker about choice and quality of experience. Because at the time, I wasn't going, oh boy, I don't have a place to live and I got $6. I had a car and I could take showers in the dormitories and whatnot. As a reference point from that point all the way through today, anytime anything seems like, gosh, this isn't good, I go, yeah, but wait a minute. Is this same, better, or worse than having $6 and a car to sleep in? And it's And one of the interesting things is at the time, I didn't have a sense that it was terrible. It was just, well, here's the circumstance. Now, what do I do with it? Now, I hadn't met JR yet, but I guess JR must have met me because I was being infused with that. How do we make this? Well, it's not even make this, like, how do I strip away the external reference points so I can be present with the internal one? And when I'm in the external reference points is when I suffer. And when I'm in the internal one, it's joyful, it's peaceful. I'm joyful, I'm peaceful. And that's an everyday lesson, absolutely, to return to the place where the peace resides.
Yeah.
I think I'm saying this mostly so I remind myself. Probably exclusively.
I appreciate it all. I appreciate all of you. And I appreciate the experience because I know I'm doing what I agreed to do. And that's joyful. I'll use the word, and I like the word fulfilling. It fills me up with I'm grateful for the loving, and that we're light bearers. That is, in the beginning, you two talked about, I feel time here on the planet is to be, number one, be a light bearer, hold the light, not remind myself that that's an honor to be here doing that. Gosh, I sound I'm listening to myself, but that's what's there, and I love being together. Okay, over and out.
Les, thank you. Who else? Why, Luis?
So I'm back. So I would like a roadmap or something that helps me attract joy into my life. Because I'm understanding your experience, but imagine that you're talking to somebody level 101.
Yep.
So what can I do?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I kind of, to some extent, what came through my head when you said that is I reject the premise. So I don't go outside of me to find joy. I go deeper within me to find joy. So step number one is reference inward and then start to get to know all those parts. So that, to me, that's a lot of listening. And then so it's really holding the light for myself and listening to all those parts of me, which are all of you, because all relationships are inside of me.
Mhm.
And then those parts of me tend to communicate what it is they need to be supported, to be loved. And then that inherently brings sort of the joy in that process. So it's not about a roadmap in the sense that roadmap is a spatiotemporal metaphor to describe a path of becoming, when in fact, for me, joy is a path of awakening, awareness, and activation. Joy is what I am. I've just placed my focus away from that. And if I activate, there may be parts of me that are in a sense dormant just because I haven't put my focus or energy into it. That's what I experienced earlier this year. It was like, whoa, I did not even know joy could feel that way. But that's really more a path of, again, willingness and also compassion and loving for the self and listening. But it's an inner process, it's not an outer process. It's not a roadmap, it's an in map. It's an in process. Sorry, Russell, go ahead.
Oh, no, completely agree. A couple of metaphors and images, and then something you can do. What I grew up in a Presbyterian family, a 4 Presbyterian ministers in the family. And when I lay down in bed at night, on the wall directly facing me was a classic picture of Jesus knocking at the door. And if you've ever seen that one, it's a heavy oaken door, and there's iron bars on it, and there's brambles all around it. And that's always taught as Jesus is knocking at the door to your heart. Will you open the door and let him in? Early on with Insight, maybe in the first month or two, I said, hey, JR, I think I finally figured out what that picture is. He said, yeah. He says, that's Jesus knocking at the door to your heart saying, will you open the door and let me out? Awakening, expanding. So exactly what Jeffrey is saying, a roadmap for some external thing to change that you might have joy. No, what do I have to move into to find the joy, to be the joy? And so one of the things you can do, technical question, have you done Insight?
All the way to 4.
That's what I thought. So Insight 1, we did the sanctuary.
Mhm.
One of the things you can do with the sanctuary is you can go in, and remember we had a room where we put a screen, like a movie screen or television screen. You can go in there and see yourself on the screen experiencing joy.
Okay.
And you might see other people going, wow, you seem so joyful. But more importantly, is you see yourself, you experience yourself, you feel yourself in joy. And it's an independent variable to things. It's what you experience that matters. Now, as opposed to a roadmap to go someplace, if we want to use that metaphor, you're saying, here's spirit, is the roadmap. How do I drive back into me?
Mhm.
Or a blueprint for how do I have the architecture of my joy? I mean, all of these metaphors are wrong because they're external. But if you keep visualizing that, now I've been doing a little work with a guy named Jim Doty, who's a world renowned neurosurgeon at Stanford, and he founded an organization called the Center for Compassion and Altruism. And he founded it with the Dalai Lama. So kind of a very cool place at Stanford. And Jim has written a new book. It's not out yet, but it's about the neuroscience of what we're talking about. And what he said was that the parts of the brain that filter based on our focus, the more we learn to focus, the more we start discovering something that's already present. So it's not about, and he's very clear, this is not about law of attraction stuff. This is about law of awareness. And he said, do you know what night vision goggles are?
No.
It's stuff that the military use. They can put these goggles on, and in no light, it shows what's around. He said, when you start to visualize the state of being that you wish, it's like you put the night vision goggles on and it reveals to you what's been all around. But what it's revealing is what's all around in you. And then you're starting to give yourself permission to live into and live from that place. So just visualize joy and you'll start to have it.
I'm also realizing the metaphor of the portfolio might give the idea that it's about building something in the world. It's actually the opposite. So for me, it's more about identifying that tuning fork of the specific frequencies of me and joy, and then tuning the instrument of my life to vibrate at that frequency. So how do I tune my life to vibrate at the frequency of my inherent joy? And it's that harmony and that resonance and that feedback and that building that harmonic frequency that starts to reverberate through my life that's been so transformational. But it's not about building. It's more about attuning or toning which is, again, it is about where I'm putting my energy, because that's like, what string am I striking, or how am I turning that, knob? So if I'm tuning the instrument of my life to resonate at the frequency of the Christ, resonate at the frequency of my joy. Step one is kind of like, I dug in and said, these 3 things, these are the tuning forks by which I can really start to tune my life to know when I'm there. So it's less about a roadmap and more about just recognizing it. I've worked with people also on processes of clearing the consciousness and the energy. And one of the biggest barriers to entry that I've witnessed in people is some people are so comfortable being gummed up energetically that they don't have a reference point for clear. So they wouldn't even know the difference. So it's almost like you got to dig deep to get that reference point for the joy of spirit. And once you have it, then it's like, how do I keep striking that tuning fork over and over and over until the rest of my life is reverberating at that frequency?
And it's so perfect that you're using all those sound metaphors and words like resonance. As JR, we would call ourselves forward in the light, but he would say it's the sound that brings the most direct connection back into spirit. So we're moving in the harmonics, as you use, we're moving in that frequency. So we're letting the sound resonate within, so it can resonate with the greater frequency of the divine, which of course is within. So following those sounds, it's beautiful. There's a metaphor of pianos. The middle A of a piano anywhere in the world vibrates at 440 hertz, and that's an international standard. And if you have a room full of pianos and you strike the A key on any one piano, all the other A440 springs vibrate in harmony with it. And if you're close enough to one of those, you can actually hear it, even though it wasn't physically struck, but it's on the frequency. So when we go in and we visualize the experience of joy, we're coming into that frequency with it. And then when you're in it, you can just ride with it. And that's why I said to Carol, you can rest into it. And then you're just in it until we choose a focus to go out of it. But listen to that inner sound, which is why he gave us tones. And so much more.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Luis. And Denise.
Okay, let me take my hand down. I've got kind of an odd, well, I don't know, interesting question, I think. We'll see. I'm looking at you, Jeffrey, and all the young ones that are coming forward, my son and David Whitaker and all these beautiful Michaela, these young ones that are bringing such light to this world. And I'm asking, and Russell, you may have an answer to this too, just like, what do you see coming forward with the immense, I see it as immense loving and wisdom, but maybe something from the heart that you picture. And I don't know what I'm asking, but I kind of do. So maybe you can pull it out.
Well, it's interesting when I attune to the essence that you're talking about, it's already forward, like it's already there.
Mhm.
And so there's not like this, well, when my generation does this and my generation does that. But I can speak honestly to an experience I've been having recently, which is there are young people who have stepped forward who haven't been deeply involved in our work, but something inside of me goes, no, that one's yours. You gotta go share with them. You gotta go attune with them. And there's something in my heart that goes, man, I would just love for this person to engage with the work and start holding this light to come in. And it would just really, really help. Because I look at it and I go, wow, there very realistically is going to come a time when I will be one of the last people on the planet that will have had direct interactions with John Roger. And that's kind of trippy for me. And then I just go, wow, I would really love to have more people to stand with me, committed to this radical willingness to just be a vessel for the spirit to express itself on the planet. And that's just me, like, that's a yearning from my heart, but it's not. But then again, when I anchor into the knowingness of it, I don't tend to mind too much. It's like it's already present. Everyone that is going to engage with it is engaged with it. Everyone that will engage with it is already engaged with, like, there's no, it's already taking place. The soul is already there. Like, everyone is a soul initiate, you know? But I think that the more we go inward and the more we connect into the essence of what we do, the less concerned we are about the outer form of how it will express on the planet. Ultimately, the things that are most precious about what we do could be done in the back room of a liquor store. It doesn't really matter. And the most precious thing I think that we do is to love and serve the one that's right in front of us. And people who know me or interact with me, they just hear me say that all over, because that I just say it over and over, because that's the way that I keep myself honest and in integrity with that consciousness that seems to want to work through me. And when I leave that to go, oh, I wish this, or I wish that, or maybe we could change this, or it's just there's a higher intelligence at play with all of it, much higher than my own, thank God. And ultimately, there is this experience when I'm called upon to do certain things, it's just there. So I don't really need to worry about it until it happens. And then it's like, oh, you're to tell this person very vulnerably about this. And then the mind goes, well, I don't want to do that. They're probably going to judge me. And then I just do it anyway. And then the person texts the next day and goes, where can I get these things you call discourses? You know, just, and you go, you know, we can pretend like we know what we're doing, or we can just do what we know when we know it. And not knowing from the mind, but knowing from the, like, that's mine. That activates my heart. And it's like it's like when you get that service request and you're already in the car driving towards the hospital to the person's bedside before you realize, like, hey, wait, where am I? What's going on? Sometimes you just know. So what I see coming forward is a perfectly orchestrated manifestation of the Christ that is beyond my understanding, and that is always answering a prayer.
Well,
Your
yeah.
dog agrees with me.
And I think JR shared a number of things about this process. I think the most striking one, which I've heard in several different contexts, is basically is be not concerned, because it's all part of the divine plan, and not one soul is going to be lost. So as soon as our ego gets in there and says, well, this has to be different, we're not necessarily in alignment. And if you that SAT tape, the 12 Signs of the Traveler, which have been playing excerpts of today, this little thing we get in and says, well, there's going to be this time when all this darkness is happening, but all this light's going to be coming as well. Well, if you focus on the darkness, and that means we've turned away from the light, and then all we see is shadow. If about one of the heartening things, if you need that, is just look at all the I'll say young people, because at almost 76 now, there's a lot of young people there. But the ones under 40, and especially ones under 30 who are ghosting jobs because there's just no meaning. There's this thirst, this growing thirst for meaning. Now, they don't necessarily have the context that we might wish them to about terms of the spiritual awareness, but that is the spirit awakening there. And we don't need to pretend like we can guide or direct that. But like Jeffrey said, if you get this message, says, well, share this. You know, my wife Inez she carries all kinds of JR books in the car, and she'll say, I have to go back. And she takes a book and says, I think you want this. And gives them a forgiveness book or a journey of a soul or something like that. You know, it's all perfect. We just need to keep our focus on the loving, and all of it takes care of itself. But that doesn't mean we're not there to wash the feet. The only question is, we don't walk around with a bucket and a brush and say, excuse me, don't you need your feet washed? But we do, maybe just energetically. So I just say, you know, let go of concern, because it's all unfolding in ways that we can't begin to understand at this point.
Yeah, I think I was writing the beauty of it that I was experiencing too. So I got that also when you both were sharing. You know, there's just a lot of loving on the planet, and I see it in our young ones, and I see it in us. And I just thank you both. And you both taught me something. Thank you.
Before I call you, Timothy, I just saw something today. A woman, maybe in her 50s or 60s in the UK. She's got MS, and I forget what else. She's got MS and some other complication, but she'd gone through some struggles about how to take care of herself. And so as she got some strength back, she has a little patch of garden, and she expanded it, and she started growing organic fruits and vegetables and giving them to people in the community who needed help. And so far, she had given, this is not a one-time basis. She was supporting 1,613 people with food that she was growing for free to give to people. And some person a couple nights ago came onto her property, unbeknownst to her, with 5 kilos of salt. So that's about 11 pounds of salt, and threw salt all over the garden. Well, that destroyed the garden and destroyed the soil, because now that it's out salty, it won't. The news hit, and this is just a couple of days ago. She had a GoFundMe page where she was looking for a couple $1,000 to do something. She's picked up over $250,000 in a couple of days to restore the land, expand the service. So, you know, it looks terrible in a moment, but maybe that was what God needed to do in order to serve a whole lot more people. So yes, that old song, you love the one you're with. Timothea?
Yeah, just a quick thing, kind of adding on to that, is there's a girl in England again, that took me to a party 44 years ago where I found out about MSIA. She went on discourses this year, and she's going on the Israel trip. Blows my mind. I've talked about JR. She met JR, but was doing other things. And then that seed got planted, and 44, it just blows my mind that she is doing that. And another joy. So you never know.
A sweet metaphor. I remember in 78 or 79, one of the early Insight ones, and I guess it was probably 79 by that point. And Jared came up to me on a break. We were doing this training together. And he said, "You seem so frustrated. What's up, Russell?" I said, "Well, it's just going so much more slowly and so on and so forth." And there were two different incidents, but this particular one, he said, "Oh, so you've not understood your role here." "What do you mean?" "Well, you think you're here for the harvest. Your job is plant the seeds and they come in their own time." And that would be quintessential JR. He traveled the world planting seeds, indifferent as to whether they bloomed and blossomed this season or years after he passed. So that's it. Our job is to plant the seeds of joy and loving just by being where we are. Anyone else? Jeffrey?
No, I was actually fiddling around with poems I wrote from out of SCs in my hands, but so
Well, why not?
yeah. Well, you talked about peace. Why don't I read one about peace?
Please do.
Peace be with you. My peace I leave with you, not peace given by the world, a condition. My peace, peace of me, peace, peace, peace that surpasses understanding, peace in silence, peace spoken, peace remembered, peace that surpasses mind. Peace be with you. All my peace I give to you. My peace I leave with you. Not the world's peace, but my peace. Peace that envelops my breathing. Peace that fills my words. Peace that I am. Peace be with you. My peace I give to you. My peace I leave with you. Not the world's peace, my peace. Peace begins with me. Peace begins right now.
Wow. Beautiful.
Maybe I'll read another.
Sure.
If ever you wonder why I do the things I do, it is only because I love you. If I listen closely, put my ear to the worn seashell of this moment, I will hear it. First a whisper, then a humming, then a choir, like a trumpet blast into pure space. If you wonder why I'm here, it is to love you, not for any reason other than that you are here. This is a moment of my heart's remembrance, a negligible flicker that turns into a corona. And all we can do is laugh and then cry and then laugh again. The current of love's ocean, better felt and not said.
When will these be published?
I have no idea. They're just handwritten.
I'd like to share, Russell.
Please do, Lynn.
I don't have a lot to say because this space is so full of grace. But when I'm thinking here about my joy portfolio, what comes forward for me is the stillness, and in that, the spaciousness and the silence. But the stillness for sure, because it's right here and it doesn't really need a lot of words or anything. And the other thing is gratitude, because listening to you, Jeffrey, and watching your face, you could be 30, 40, 3 years old, 5 years old. There is a timeless presence that is, I don't know what to, I don't have a name for it, but it makes me happy. It makes me joyful. I want to laugh. I want to tweak your cheeks. I'm just very, very grateful for all of this coming together and not knowing anything before we get here, except you put some things on, this is what was the last one was about the pathless path or something. I forgot what you called it. And then there's this one about our joy portfolio. And being in the movement since 78, I don't care what you call anything anymore that I'm going to sign up for. It absolutely does not concern me. I said this to you before, and you may not remember, but I remember an evening in Miami where you were holding a seminar. It was called What So? So What? And I think it's What
Now
Now?
what?
Now
Now
what?
what?
Now what? And I walked in the door and I thought, geez, I could just kind of go home, because it was like so evident to me that this is how this is. And it made me, I was just like so happy, another clapping seal moment. And words are so defining, and sometimes it's so good to not have them, but we have to convey our sharing and our caring and our connectedness. But I'm very, very grateful what y'all are doing, because I don't think there's anything more transformative, transmutative, or transcendent than what we all are willing to give to in this. I don't care what you call it. I call it Hollywood Squares, the Zoom togetherness. God bless us all. That's all I have to say. I feel like I did find 2 parts of my portfolio, and I'm working on it. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, we're fast approaching our allotted time. One last shot, if anyone has something they want to share or a question to ask. Jeffrey, would you like to do a closing for us?
What would a closing look like?
Well, we could.
Ask inside.
Well, we could simply ask for the light to clear ourselves, our rooms, and our technologies, releasing anything into the light and shining the path forward into our joy.
All right. Dear Lord, Father, Mother, beloved friend, joyful companion, we ask for the light in this moment, in every moment, to envelop every molecule of this experience, that we may vibrate at the frequency of the Christ, in harmony with Spirit's joy, with our beloved John Roger. And at this time, we ask for the clearing, that anything that can be released that is not in service to this joyful process, that it be taken into the highest realms of light and dispersed in the nothingness from whence it came. We ask to become ever more aware of God's presence, that with each step, we take it arm in arm with the beloved. That we release with each breath all that we have placed between us, and the appreciation and gratitude of knowing that we are loved, that God is with us. We're so grateful for the warmth of the Christ, of John Roger, of the beloved holding us. And in this peace that surpasses understanding, we plant once again the seed of dedication. Father, thy will be done, and for this we give our thanks. Berish Bashan.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for bringing your love and light. As you know, we've recorded this, and I'll be sending it out to all who registered. So those who weren't able to attend will get it. And when you get it, the copy, if you want to share it with someone else, please feel free to. So thank you each and all. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
God bless you all.